Hey there, welcome back. It's Louisa Tanner-Munson from Feel Good Astrology. And today this is a kind of a spontaneous exploratory kind of pop-up video. You know, this wasn't planned for much more than half an hour, I promise you. So I've been doing what I love behind the scenes. And what I love is interviewing people who I think are really cool and trying to find out what makes them tick. And also often comparing their astrology just so I can look at other patterns and learn more and then get to share more. And so basically what this video is me sharing some of my results, but also some discoveries that had never occurred to me before. So I had never, ever considered the Uranus and Chiron opposition that is really, really prevalent throughout my lifetime, and how important it is and how it's shown up religiously in the charts of some of the people I've been looking at. So what I wanted to do was really, and it's funny timing because we've got the new moon in Taurus tomorrow, which is deeply healing, very, very healing, very, very natural. And it's kind of cool because in the last month and a half, I interviewed 3 of my shaman friends. I say shaman friends, you know, they're one of them's medical, who's become very naturopathic, is an integrative medical consultant, you know, very, very experienced, knows a hell of a lot. Then I've got, you know, a friend who was very corporate and then came into shamanism, you know, and now helps people find their brand using healing techniques. And then I've got another one who you know, if you want to watch that far ahead, you'll see I've got another amazing friend who has just always been a plants person and an artist and has been very, very connected with the ground. And so, you know, I wanted to report on, you know, what they were up to. And I've interviewed them for my other channel, you know, about what makes them tick and what's floating their boat and what we can learn about grounding and whatnot. So anyway, cut a long story short, I interviewed them all and then afterwards looked at their charts and described how, you know, their charts were really describing their healing abilities. And then it got me thinking, well, okay, let's have a look at more healers today. Because I've got a whole heap of people. I seem to attract healers, probably because I love healing myself. So I've been looking at the charts of doctors come naturopaths, midwives, coaches who have a medical background, like just loads of different people that use vibration and frequency in healing, and also scientists and researchers and stuff. So I've got a real steady mix of people who, if you were to unpick and look behind the actual techniques they use, what you would see is that they care for humanity and they've got a deep reverence for life. They want to fix things and they're ready to kind of look in an unusual way. And so when I had a look at all of these charts, I noticed there were some patterns, and that's what this video is really about, is exploring these patterns I noticed in the charts of healers, and also a discovery that it had never occurred to me before. And so I wanted to share it with you. I'm sure there are other astrologers out there that have made this discovery and have spoken about it, have probably written books about it, but this is just what occurred to me. And so this is just a very real-time video about what I'm learning and what is surprising me and maybe what it means. And, you know, as usual, I'm really happy if you want to have a little discussion underneath in the comments, or, you know, if you want to talk about it with me on my show or whatever, then just get in touch. So anyway, I'm just going to share some of my thoughts here. So the first thing, in looking at all these different charts, I noticed there were some real sort of patterns, that there was definitely, like, Chiron was definitely involved in these patterns, you know, to do with healing elements, and sort of modern day shamanism. So, you know, Chiron was definitely there, and you would expect that because Chiron is known as the wounded healer. So he helps people with their wounds, with their core wounds. So I often think in a psychological way, but, you know, it really does also match with our physical wounds, and illnesses. So anyone that's had, you know, very deep illnesses before, you know, if you study where Chiron is in your chart and what was approaching it, or where Chiron was at the time in relationship to your chart when you got ill, it usually shows up. I've noticed Chiron shows up in the charts in quite a lit up way in the charts of healers. I also noticed that Uranus did too, which, if you think about it, Uranus is about consciousness, and then Chiron is about healing, and later the mastery that comes with it, from learning about the healing process. So the two of them, I guess you would expect to see them somewhere in the charts of people who are on a healing mastery pathway and also interested in human consciousness. Yeah, the next thing I noticed about these charts was Hygeia, the goddess of health and healing, was highlighted. And, I would expect her to be as well, because, there's the exploration of how we might be involved in our healing. So I really like Hygeia. Mercury also, obviously Mercury works very fast and is moving from place to place, delivering information. So a lot of communication, a lot of information is there. And if you think about a healing process, are we talking about the movement of, your blood flow, the consciousness that maybe is triggering healing, the dialogue that you're having with your doctor or people that are supporting you or coaches or whatever, so it's like an ongoing dialogue and within the mindset. So I always think Mercury moves things. Mercury is also kind of linked into the magician, in forms of like tarot, when you're thinking about I guess the archetypes of and powerful roles that people hold. We might not see these modern day shamans or magicians or people who we would trust with our health, but it's like the wise woman or the wise man, the person that everyone goes to for healing. There are these characters who just seem to have a link into another world. Maybe they can see what's really ailing somebody on an energetic level as well. So I also think of that. There are lots of different things. Like my husband's got this phrase that somebody else said, something to do with medicine is what happens to distract a patient while they naturally heal themselves. That's another view of medicine as well. And, by me exploring this, like I said, this is really unprepared. These are just my very uncensored thoughts, and I'm not here to create any kind of upset or anything. And I'm very, very happy to talk about everything. So, just want to put that out there. I don't want to upset anyone, if what I'm saying doesn't match your worldview. I'm not saying I'm right or, anything, these are just what's occurring to me in the moment, in the flow. Then we've also got Ceres, who is known as Mother Nature or Demeter, so there is something very natural about her and the natural cycles of life. And if you think, anything involved in the flow of birthing, growing, getting stronger, reproducing, dying back, and the whole sort of reincarnation, reincarnation, like the whole idea of going around and around, there are life cycles of people, diseases, states of being, we are always changing. And in fact, when we don't change, it's because we're not alive. Life is always changing. We cannot halt life. It's like the in-breath and an out-breath. It's always continuously moving. The other thing I noticed in these charts of healers that I was looking at was there was maybe something to do with Uranus and Chiron or Hygeia and Mercury, but I noticed that there was a strong 4th and 10th polarity, or a 2nd and 8th polarity, or a 6th and 12th. Now the 6th and 12th was the one I was expecting, because the 6th is very much about our day-to-day living and our habits. And of course, if we've got good and easy habits, often it shows up that we have quite good and easy health. So I always think the 6th house is kind of like what we're manifesting and organizing and bringing into reality. And I always think that the 12th is a little bit like what we're dematerializing, because at some level, the 12th is like our departure. It's like how we fade away, how we connect with all that is. So, I see the 6th as a place of physical health, and the 12th is very much mental health. So I expected to see the 6th and 12th show up, because there is something about how we're organizing our life. And the 6th does also include our work. But the 4th and 10th also makes sense as well, like the 10th being, a place of maybe our success, our reputation, where we're known. So, I guess in the charts of people who've made it as a physician or who really have a strong career, that they've worked really hard for, studied for, and gone up the ranks. I would expect to see that with maybe a 4th and 10th polarity, because the 4th would be involved. You can't just get up there unless you've got support to get there. So these things often work in a polarity. And again, the 2nd and the 8th, the 2nd very much about how we're earning money, and then the 8th, I think, very much about other people's money, but also life and death come into this. Reproduction comes into the 8th, and also the idea of other people's money, like if you think of health insurance and things like that. But also, there is something about humanity there and the psychology of humanity there. So I really expected to see these highlighted, in particular the 6th and 12th. But I guess it wasn't a huge surprise to see these houses. But one thing that came up again and again, and it's nothing I'd ever considered before, but it was, it was the fact that there's a Uranus-Chiron opposition pattern going on. And when I looked at it, I thought, well, that's because all the people that I'm looking at the charts of were all born, in the 60s. And then I thought, well, hang on, these people were born in the 70s. And then I looked further at some of the other healers that I knew who were born in the 50s. And I was like, oh, they've also got that. And I was thinking, well, how can that possibly be? Uranus, has a cycle of 50 years, 83.9 years. And Chiron has, sorry about my dogs going crazy in the background. Chiron has got a cycle of 50 years. How could there be an opposition going on for so long? Well, that's the thing that I've been exploring. So in this video, I really want to kind of show you some of the templates of healers. I'm going to stick my deep dives with my friends that I interviewed on the end as well. So they're there. And I've put links in. So if you actually want to see the interviews, you can go and see those as well. And I've also sort of explored the idea of the Uranus-Chiron opposition, why it was going on for 37 years. How could that be? And also maybe what that means in terms of the timing. So I'm going to have a look at that bit first, actually, because that's the thing. I really like astrological theories and things like that. I don't like it in an uptight way. I just like it kind of in a loose and baggy way where we can all just share our thoughts. I'm just fascinated by these patterns. So like I said, Chiron's got a 50-year cycle. Uranus has got an 83.9-year cycle. Now, what you can see with these images, and these are really great, you can go to astro-seek.com on the second tab in. If you scroll all the way down to where it says planetary cycles, I think, and then you can search the cycles of all the planets. But the Uranus one, you can see, Uranus spends roughly an equal amount of time in each sign. It's ever so slightly elliptical, so for instance, 7.8 years it's been in Pisces, and 6.3 in Virgo in its opposite sign. So it's slightly longer, on this side of the ecliptic, and slightly shorter on this side of the ecliptic. So, Uranus has got an elliptical cycle, but not a massively elliptical cycle. Compare it to Chiron. Now, Chiron's cycle moves in between Uranus and Saturn, kind of goes in between the two. And so you can see that, Chiron whizzes through certain signs in a year and a half, or 1.6 years in the sign of Virgo, and then in the sign of Pisces spent 7.4 years. In fact, right now is going through Aries for 8.4 years. So this is a really, really strong pattern. Now, when you compare the two of them together, what it means is, over the space of 200 years or so, it's going to have a lot of the same aspects repeated over and over again, because each of these, move forward a certain amount of degrees each year, and then also go retrograde and then move forwards again. So Uranus, I think, spends 4 or 5, maybe 6 months every year going retrograde and then moving forwards again. Now, it just so happens that right now, Chiron's cycle is roughly the same as Uranus's cycle, 7.4, 7.8 years. Now, obviously, Uranus is actually in Taurus now, and Chiron's in Aries. And Chiron's the slower of the two, but that's not always the case. And so, we have got stuck in a loop of oppositions. So what does that mean is the big question. And we can see it sort of demonstrated in another way. Before I go any further, I just want to thank everyone who does support this channel. Your support really means a lot to me, and it encourages me so much to just carry on getting delighted by astrology and thinking, oh, I wonder if I can share that. Let's give it a go, just like I did today. So thank you so much. So yeah, this is a big question I've been saying to myself. Why didn't I see this pattern before? Because I pride myself on seeing these patterns. So in actual fact, you can find this again if you go to astro-seek.com. Now, I think I did a planetary aspect search. So I searched for all aspects between Uranus and Chiron, and I set it back to 1950 until like 2100. So I wanted to see what came up. And so you can see here from 1952 all the way down to 1969, all oppositions, and you'll see it goes all the way through the signs. So initially, they were in Cancer and Capricorn, then they transitioned into Leo and Aquarius, all the way down, and right the way through the 70s, all the way down to 89, and then it finally comes out of its opposition pattern. Now, in this time, it wasn't continuously in opposition. These are the moments when both of them are exactly in opposition. But for most of the time, they were close, like they might have had an orb of 5 degrees apart, from the opposition, or 7 or 8, so they were always coming in and out of opposition over and over and over again, literally for 37 years. So they're in opposition or no opposition and no other possible aspect. So they went through all the opposition, like the opposite polarity signs, Libra and Aries. The only exception, obviously they both went, Uranus went through Scorpio and Chiron went through Taurus. However, they didn't have any exact oppositions in these signs during that time. And then, they come up in Sagittarius and Gemini, Capricorn and Cancer. And then in 1994 came the trines. So the trines just start down there. I'm just wondering why my present. This is what I mean. I did this at the last minute. So then came the trines. Then I was thinking, well, if we got trines, then how does this pattern continue? So I was looking, and then in 1942 we're going to have the conjunction. So I was thinking, okay, so we're like from 1952 to 89, we just had oppositions or nothing else, and then since 94 we've had these trines, and then a square in 97. So that all happened very, very quickly, and then into these sextiles. This conjunction is going to be pretty strong, pretty rare. I think it's going to be huge. And one of the reasons why is, I think like Chiron is about our wounds and our healing and possible physical disease patterns, what we can learn and how we can master these processes. Why is my door open? And then Uranus is about consciousness and change, and things that might shock us and things that might bring us alive, things that might bring us independence and freedom, things where we might rebel. So, when I go back and think, okay, we've had these. Oh, okay. He needs a poop. Okay. Sorry about that. This is like real family life. I didn't expect to be disturbed. And yeah, my little 5-year-old needed a poop. So that's all sorted. So yeah, it really got me thinking, like, what is the difference between the Uranus and Chiron opposition energy, and also what will it mean when they come together in 2042? It's a big question. And so, yeah, so here I've kind of paced it out, and these are just some of my thoughts. I'd be really keen to hear yours too, because, you know, like I said, I haven't studied this, and also I'm not sure I necessarily hold, you know, I think these things are individual at best. You know, this is, how can I say what really occurs? This is just what is occurring to me right now. So, you know, I noticed, so between 52 and 89, we only had oppositions. In 1994, the energy started to move to trines, one square, and a few sextiles. And then we're going to have this big conjunction in 2042. So one of the things that I was thinking in terms of health, given that they've shown up in the charts of all these healers, I was thinking about my experiences. I'm not talking about everybody else's. I was thinking about my experiences of health systems and what I learned about health from an early age. And actually, what I learned about health, and this might not match your pattern at all, but I learned that health was something that was done to. I learned from an early age that we all had to go for checkups regularly at the doctors, and also we had to go to the dentist. Almost like prevention was better than, you know, not having these preventative things in place. Now, I don't mean to talk about this in a disparaging way, you know, because I recognise as well that the National Health Service was set up in 1948, literally just a few years before we went into our first Chiron-Uranus opposition. But the thing that I learned about health, and I maybe will mention some of why I believe this, you know, I was always raised with this idea that we needed to have treatment, that we couldn't naturally be healthy, that, you know, if we didn't have treatments, if we didn't have vaccinations, if we didn't have all these different things happen to us, then we would be poorly or sickly. And I grew up with this very strong feeling that it was the thing that you did. Like, you went for routine checkups. I remember when I decided I was going to go and visit the Far East, when I was in my 20s, the first thing I did was go to my doctor to ask, what do I need to do to be able to travel safely? You know, I was really in the mindset of trusting doctors to know the right thing for my health. And so my comment here is that there was this kind of paternalism around health, the idea that other people know more about your body than you do, and that we're outside of our own healing process. I've also got a feeling of victimhood as well. And that comes from the fact that I've had a sensitivity to drugs from an early age. So for instance, when I went to the doctors with my mum about something, I was given 2 different types of medications, and within 24 hours, I was in hospital. And when I had travel vaccines twice, I ended up in hospital. And I didn't make a connection that maybe they weren't very good for me. So I have had my own experience. That's why I say victimhood. The idea that you take advice because you're told that people know that this is absolutely what you need. And then the actual reality that I got damaged or harmed by following that particular advice. And I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm absolutely not saying that one little bit. But what I am saying is I've grown up with a mindset that healing is outside of our control, that, you know, the consciousness of healing is not something that we had, you know. So I was brought up very strongly with this idea that you go to the doctors and it's the doctor that tells you what's going on with your healing, and you're kind of really outside of the process. You go to find out. So that was my experience growing up. And then being the sort of independent thinker that I am, I really remember, it started before 94. I was pretty much, from the moment I had pocket money, I was going out and buying books on self-healing. But I had reactions to other things, and I'd been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, or fibromyalgia, or ME, whatever you want to call it. And so I was trying to look up if there were any links between your mood and your health. And so I was absolutely into self-help. And I'm guessing that, in 1994, when the energy of consciousness and healing started to align together, what occurred to me was, well, self-help really came on in leaps and bounds, and, I was thinking back, where did a lot of my books come from? A lot of them were Hay House. Well, Hay House was, I think, came online in 87. So a little bit before 1994. But it's like the energy was moving into that trine pattern. The energy was ready for universal consciousness and the idea of independence, and that we can do things ourselves, like personal sovereignty and freedom, which is very much Uranian themes. And then Chiron, the idea of healing, and the mastery of healing. They were in a trine. And so I noticed that it was becoming more and more mainstream. Alternative therapies were flourishing. Knowledge was spreading far and wide with the internet, because obviously the internet came in during that time as well. And we start beginning our own healing process. Now, I'm sure, I know, I live in Portugal, which is obviously very different to the UK. And I know in Portugal, from what I do know, obviously I'm not a native, so I don't have quite the same cultural background. But like, when you go to supermarkets here, you can buy all sorts of herbs really easily. I'm not talking about seasonings. I'm talking about herbs that you might to make, a healing pomade or a tea or anything like that. You might want to make your own decoctions and things like that. So there is almost this feeling of herbalism. There are loads and loads of health food shops here selling the things that you might make. It almost looks like you could buy things and make a spell, and I know that their health system came in a lot later than the one in the UK. And Portugal is very, very proud of their healthcare system. And consequently, with the rollout of the COVID vaccines, Portugal had a much higher uptake than anywhere else in Europe. It's one of the highest uptakes in Europe. And I think it's because they are really, really proud, fiercely proud, that they've got their own health, their national health system in place, their national health service. And so they want to spread that knowledge. But I know that because they got theirs a lot later, if you look into their ancestry, if you were to talk to some of these Portuguese grandmas, you would hear all their healing wisdom in a way that in the UK, our grandmothers might have lost it a little bit earlier. I might have needed to go back to my great grandmothers to hear about how they healed themselves, because obviously people did go in and out of illness, and they did have little healing. They had their own healing routines because they were still involved in the healing. So I'm wondering if Uranus and Chiron are describing our attitudes to health on a huge scale. So what I see with this opposition is maybe that we came out of sovereignty with our own health. And then 2042, obviously this is in quite a long time away from where we are now. And I already see that all of these things are already happening, but like any kind of way showing technology or ideas or thinking, it happens for decades before it gets really, really picked up and adopted. But I wonder if in 2042, when Uranus and Chiron come together, and you've got the sovereignty, the desire to be really sovereign in our health. And of course, Uranus represents vibrations, frequencies, shock information, telepathy, channeling, really going into your own power and the higher mind, and being able to link consciousness, it's consciousness. So it's like pure consciousness and the healing, So I'm wondering if in 2042, we're going to have this really big revolution in healing. Now, I realize that I didn't even check what sign this was going to take place in. So I'm just going to go back and quickly check. So, yeah, when this conjunction happens in 2042, it's happening in the sign of Leo. So Uranus in Leo, so consciousness and sovereignty, consciousness and being the king of your own castle, consciousness, and absolutely personalized consciousness, like you are absolutely using outside consciousness in a deeply personal way. And then the healing process is person related. In Leo, this is absolutely identified with themselves. If you think of the polarity between Aquarius and Leo, Aquarius is very non-attached to self, and Leo is really attached to self. So that makes me even more excited about 2042. Really excited indeed. So that's just why, so I'm wondering if we're going to get self-healing, like where we start to really like determine our healing process, person-centered therapy, vibrational healing, frequency-led healing, and, making the connection between happiness and health. If you think of Leo, it's the fifth sign of the zodiac, the fifth house. Like the vibration of 5 is about joy, it's about love, it's about spreading the creativity. The fifth house is all about creativity and having fun and love and intimacy and sharing. And Leo is absolutely creative, absolutely full of vitality. The whole idea of Leo is to self-express, and to be completely self-expressed, and to be like radiating out their joy. And if you think of the sun that rules Leo, we have got the energy of vitality, like masses of vitality. And so I wonder if we are really going to make the connection that intimacy and healing are absolutely uniquely combined. Because again, when I think about the idea of how we've taken orders about how we heal ourselves, and that's been throughout my whole life. And I'll be honest, I'm very grateful for paramedics. I'm very grateful for people that can offer me healing in an emergency. But in all other cases, I seek my own counsel. I do my own research. I speak with people about natural options. And I have a family homeopath. So I go to my homeopath first. It's only if we can't get back in balance that we would go to consult a doctor. And, the balance of, the idea, that in certain countries at different times, if you don't listen to your doctor can get you locked up or take your children away from you. I remember seeing a case of a family that wanted to treat their child naturally, didn't want to give their child chemotherapy, and the doctor and the lawmakers and social securities came after the family and separated them. That's the complete opposite of what I think might be happening in 2042, where happiness and health and togetherness and intimacy is highlighted, where everybody is involved in the healing. And it really reminds me of German New Medicine. I'm a massive fan of German New Medicine. I'm not trained in it, but I look into it. If anyone gets any kind of imbalance, I'm looking at the idea of it. So German New Medicine says that there are 3 reasons why people get ill. So, one of them is that we have an accident and there's an internal injury. Another one is poisoning, which obviously we can all see. If we get food poisoning, we get a reaction to it. But the last one, and this is what German New Medicine says the most, and that is when we go through a shock and we're not supported through that shock. In fact, when we feel isolated within that shock, we go through a biological process. Our bodies, our mammalian bodies, are programmed to have responses to help us through. And so that creates, there's a whole methodology behind it. But, whether I believe in German New Medicine or not, what I recognize in all of those illnesses that I've had over the years, when I go back to look at what was going on before it, each of these times, apart from when I was given things that obviously poisoned me, each of the times where I got poorly without any kind of medication, it was always after a shock where I felt completely isolated, where I didn't feel supported, where I didn't feel completely loved, where I didn't feel whole and healed and valued. And so this is where I think 2042 could be a revolution in healing. Revolution, rebelliousness is all a Uranian theme, and Chiron is the wounded healer. So they are just my thoughts. You might not like them, and I'm not saying that is how it is, but it just occurred to me, and it all came to me really through examining the charts of healers that I know, that I trust, many of whom, like I said, have got an actual scientific background, a doctoring background, working with real life patients. So let's have a look at some of these now. So these are absolute real life healers, not mentioning any names or anything. This is somebody who was born in 72, medical GP and surgeon. The Chiron and Uranus opposition is strong here. And why would there be, I'm guessing with this Chiron and Uranus opposition so prevalent for 37 years in my lifetime, I'm guessing a lot of people would have needed healing. If we have gone really separate in how we consider ourselves to be, if you think like this is post-war, people went through masses of shock, masses of isolation. And when I think about my parents' generation and how all of a sudden, there weren't so many stay-at-home mums, families were shifting, women were coming back to work, women were also paying tax. There was all sorts of things to get men and women working together, and children were becoming more and more remote. And that kind of trend has changed. Finances and economics has also changed that. There's been less emphasis on the actual original family and maybe the value of it. And at the same time, there's also been a lot of uncovering of the inner psychology of families. So families don't always work. And actually families can be some of our biggest causes of psychological imbalance. But all I'm saying is we seem to be in quite an experimental phase as humans, where we're really learning about what makes us tick, what makes us ill, what makes us functional, what makes us definitely not functional. Anyway, so I think this time will have brought up lots of healers, the need for healers of all different modalities, coaches, anyone that is involved in helping people feel better about themselves. So there you go. That's my thoughts. So Uranus in opposition to Chiron is really strong here across the 2nd and the 8th, just into the 9th house in this one. But the polarity, this person is earning money, working with the sick. Literally working with the sick. And the consciousness is in a conjunction with Mars. This person is also, a surgeon trained in surgery, and also understands patterns of healing and health. Pallas Athena is strong there, to be able to recognize the patterns and to use all the sort of medical jargon. It's really important. This person also got to the top of their game. So the sun is in a conjunction with the midheaven as well. It was also anticipated that this was the only choice of career for this person, really determined by the family and the setup. Hygeia is in an exact trine to Chiron, so health and healing. This person later, much later on, got into a much more natural way of working in terms of health. And also Hygeia is in a conjunction with Mercury. I've seen this a few times actually. So Hygeia and Mercury connections really seem strong there. And also Saturn in a trine to Uranus. Like Saturn is showing our authority, and this person obviously had quite a lot of authority. We've got someone here born in 1952. Again, somebody with a practice, a very, very big practice. They have the Chiron-Uranus opposition from, again, the 2nd house and into the 8th house, very much about how we're earning money and also working with other people's money and values and insurance and life cycles and stuff like that. This person also has the sun in a conjunction with the midheaven. Again, had a lot of authority. And Ceres and Hygeia are in a very tight conjunction as well, which is really, really beautiful and really describes the way this person works. Really uses the science that they have learned and seen practically practiced, and also really favors naturopathy as well. So real true healers. I don't know where that picture's gone. Okay. This was somebody with Moon in a conjunction to Uranus, and also a 4th and 10th house polarity, Hygeia in a trine with Uranus and sextile Chiron, and Hygeia in the 6th. This is somebody who is very much into rehabilitation in terms of a medical pattern. We've got another healer here, born in 71, Chiron in opposition to Uranus. This person has got Chiron and Uranus right across the, the IC, the angle to do with the home, and the MC, all about the career here. Very, very strong. And then they've also got a full moon, across the 1st and 7th houses. So this person has a very sort of angular Sun, Moon, Chiron, and Uranus, and in fact, their positions make it into a mystic rectangle, which is a really interesting, flowing connection and constellation of planets. Really amazing. This person also has Hygeia in a conjunction to Mercury in the 2nd house. So again, it's not the first time we've seen it. It's not the last either. But interesting. So, in 70, so we've had someone in 52, 66, 71, 81, all of them with this opposition. This person born in 66, another Chiron Uranus opposition. Where is it? There is, this is a really strong pattern for everyone born in 64, 65, 66, 67, Uranus and Chiron. They are also in a conjunction with Pluto and also Saturn. Very, very difficult. And also deeply, deeply powerful. Now, again, they've got their polarity across the 2nd and 8th house polarity. They were born at the time of the new moon, and also have a Hygeia and Mercury conjunction, this time not in the 2nd house but in the 4th house. They've also got a mystical rectangle with Uranus and Chiron, but theirs also goes with Neptune and the midheaven. So again, there are these repeated patterns coming up in scientists and healers and those that have done both. Interesting. Got this person born in 65. Again, they've got the Chiron Uranus opposition. They've got theirs across the 4th and 10th house polarity, and also got Mercury and Hygeia in a conjunction in the 4th house. That really brings me to the end of their charts. Now what I'm going to do is bring on the real life analysis of my 3 shamanistic friends. Like I said, if you like the way, if you like them, they're really, really cool people. You can actually watch my interviews with them. I will put the links below, but they're really, really cool people. And they've all got offers on, to help people create their own healing pathways. They've got, all 3 of them have got healing offers that are free and really, really powerful. So I'm going to leave you with my analysis of their charts, just in case that is of interest to you. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, it wasn't a planned show. This was just something that I thought, oh my goodness, wow, I need to talk about this. And just get my thoughts out there. I really am curious about your thoughts and what your experiences of healthcare are. I mean, I know, I know lots of people who absolutely are so grateful for the healthcare they've had. And I have been part of medical experiments. I've had things work for me. I've had things not work for me. I'm very grateful my mum survived cancer. And, I'm not dissing modern medicine, but I was just noticing the ongoing pattern, or my experience, that in the age that I've grown up in, we have been separated from our health, almost like our health consciousness has been, not respected. It's like, oh, you think you're in charge of your health, do you? Well, you're wrong. I think that is all set to change in the coming decades. Anyway, lots of love to you. Take care and happy new moon. Bye for now. Let's bring your charts onto the screen. Now, it's probably a bit difficult for you guys to see them. But when they're on a big screen, they should be a lot easier to understand after, like if you see this after it's like gone live. So this is your chart, Jenny, and this is your chart, Bo. And what I've got in the middle is all of the planets at the time, place, and date of your birth. I've put in some asteroids, which I always use. These are the feminine ones. Ceres, which is like Demeter, she's Mother Nature. I've also got Juno. She's all about commitment and dedication and higher love. I've also got Pallas Athena, who is about, I would say, feminine strategic wisdom and noticing patterns. And also Vesta, which looks like almost like the steam coming from a cup of coffee. She's all about living with integrity. And also I think Chiron, yeah, there you go. Chiron, the wounded healer, who comes up very strongly in lots of people's charts, who are healers or coaches, anyone that is on a healing path. So where shall I start? Well, the first thing, because we're talking about the elements of Earth, I think, we're going to sort of head on to grounding, and also the fact that we've got this very strong Uranus and Jupiter conjunction coming up. So around the outside, we've got all the current positions of planets. So I'm really curious to see where this flash of Earth is showing up in each of your charts, because it's showing this kind of new healing energy, a sort of innovative healing energy, possibly where we might use technology to help with the healing journey, but also it's very, very expansive. And the first thing I noticed straight away with your chart, Jenny, is obviously you've got your sun and your moon in Earth signs. Which is very, very grounded. You've got Scorpio rising, which also makes you a real sort of powerhouse. The energy of Scorpio always likes to really tune into, what's at the root cause, like really sort of like get down to the nitty gritty. You're like wanting to get in deep into the consciousness of what's going on in a situation.
That's so Jenny.
Yeah, I should have been a detective, really.
and also at the same time, whatever you find out, you then are wanting to take practical actions, so it's not just about kind of investigating people for shits and giggles, you're doing that so that you can create some practical outcomes. So I love that. And you've got this lovely moon, this very caring moon on the descendant, really showing your desire to like help heal people. Now, right now, as we're recording this, Jupiter and Uranus are coming into their conjunction right on your moon and your descendant. So this feels very, very integral to, I guess, birthing, your new big project, the resources that you've created with Bo. It feels like a very releasing moment in time. What I would say, and you might have noticed this already going on, is right now the people in your life maybe seem a bit chaotic or a bit accident prone, because Uranus right on your descendant. Your descendant is about the people in your life. And so it's like, they're either bringing chaos and adventure and insight and, consciousness, which are very Uranian themes, but also with Uranus is sudden breaks, sudden change, so people might seem a bit unpredictable around you. And, their emotions might also seem very unpredictable, and that's likely to make you feel a little bit unstable. So you might also need to take your advice, which I'm sure you're doing.
Yeah.
That's like my first thought. Also, I mean, your Uranus is also very close to your ascendant. So, Uranus is a very important planet for you. It's very much about consciousness and the unseen world, and how you can work with the unseen and make it seen. I also notice your Saturn up here in a conjunction with your Sun, really showing that you've always been quite adult, always happy to sort of take on responsibility. What I would say is you're able to take on responsibility. Things that a lot of people probably couldn't, in such a way that you're able to control a situation, or be able to say, okay, everyone stop, here's how we might do it. You're happy to assume that position, which is important because we need people to do that. Let's have a look at Bo's, because you've got a whole different kind of set of energies going on here, Bo. You've got this lovely Libran rising. Now, interestingly, you've also got your moon in the 7th house, just like Jenny has. again, it's very much tuning into the emotions of other people and tuning into the sort of collective energy of people. And whereas Jenny's got Uranus and Jupiter on her moon, right now, you've got like the sun, Chiron's not a million miles away from there. You've also got Mercury retrograde over there. So it might also seem to you like people are a little bit confusing. You're picking up on the confusion of people around you at the moment, and possibly about their call, their sort of their call for deep healing and cleansing. So whereas in Jenny's world, it feels like people are coming crashing into her world, being with you, I get the sense that you're being called in to go deep with people at the moment. People are calling you in a different way. And here's also, I love this. So obviously, if I was to put your charts together, your North Node, Bo, which is about your karma, is connected to Jenny's descendant and her moon. So it's like Jenny's emotional set point is connected to your karmic set point. There is this kind of shared emotional karmic vision that you both have. Because like Jupiter and Uranus is right over Jenny's moon, it's very, very close to your North Node as well. So it's definitely opening up. This is a turning point in your life, I would say, where something is about to go boom,
Oh.
How does that sound so far?
We've also got, I've noticed, Chiron. We've both got Chiron in the 6th. Is that
yes,
right?
you do.
Yeah.
So do I as well. That is also something that comes up with people that work as coaches and healers. It's a really good spot, that actually, Jenny. Chiron in the 6th is a really funny one, because a lot of people with Chiron in the 6th go through a bit of ill health themselves. And often that's the thing, like how they manage their own energy systems often leads them in the direction of natural health and healing, and how to help heal other people. Because when we do it for ourselves, it just sort of extends and vibrates out of us. So that's a really good observation. I'm not surprised to see it there. But it often takes us a while to get on our feet, with Chiron in the 6th. Because the narrative that we've all been sold, the idea that, if you go to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, everything's going to be hunky-dory. Doesn't work the same for us. That's almost like a death sentence. It kind of it creates a feeling of dis-ease for most of us, with that as a marker. What's your interpretation of it, Jenny? Because I know you've been studying astrology, in particular medical astrology.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think kind of my sole purpose is through my Chiron placement, really. And I understand where my wounds kind of come from with Chiron, especially in Taurus. But definitely I've developed my kind of my work, and the way I am is through my own health stories and my where I've been kind of deeply wounded, and that is definitely emotional linked with physical for sure, and psychological and soul as well. Definitely my wounded soul has led me to kind of where I am today. And Bo and I really started coming together in 2020 when everything was going crazy. So Bo and I kind of knew each other before then, but I moved next door to her in 2017 after a big shift in my life and a very difficult time. And we didn't get really close during that time because I was kind of like in proper hermit mode, and I was like head down, just trying to work and survive, really. But then in 2020, when everything had shut down, I still needed to walk my dogs. So Bo would come with me while we were walking our dogs. And that's where we developed this kind of sense that we knew that our sole purpose, both of us, was to try and help other people. And I was looking at it from quite a physical perspective because of my background in nursing and looking at in that way. And Bo was very much looking at it from a kind of energetic soul alternative perspective. And we managed to kind of merge those together and come up with this kind of way in which we can tackle all three to be able to live our kind of life's purpose. So that's what we've been doing really the last 4 years, is trying to come to that point. But yeah, it's interesting that you say in a lot of healers' charts, the Chiron's in the 6th, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've all three of us have got our Chiron in the 6th, our Chiron making a trine to the midheaven. The midheaven is about our career. So like there's yours, Bo. Yours is in conjunction with Saturn, which makes it you really quite sort of serious and purposeful with how you want to do it. Yours is also, so you've got, this is you, Jenny, Chiron in a trine to your sun, in a trine to your Saturn, and also in a trine to your midheaven. So, you know, what I really get with both of those is you've got Chiron and Saturn connected and your midheavens. Okay, they're in different ways, but, you know, Saturn is about taking responsibility and being an elder and showing up as a reliable, a safe ground, I would say, and also very much about teaching. And Chiron is helping people. I always think, you know, Chiron at one end is showing us what we need to heal, but it also shows us our transformation and how we become a mentor and a guide in our own right. So you're taking people on a healing journey so that they can heal beyond their problems and, you know, then start to show up as a mentor. And so I really see that there's a lot of responsibility that you're taking here. So I'm not surprised you've got your course accredited. That makes complete sense to me. And then you're trying to the midheaven. It's very much like, this is how you rise. This is how you show up in the world. Jenny, yours is also in a trine with Ceres, you know, goddess Demeter, you know, Demeter of the earth. So, you know, this is absolutely, and she's also the Earth Mother, you know, so it is about like the potentials. It's really funny. Like when you look at astrology, I always say that Saturn and Ceres really show the great mum and the great father. And so I think there's something ancestral going on there. Now, obviously, I know that you, Bo, also are really quite ancestral too. Now, when we look at your Chiron, yours is also connected to your South Node, which is about the past, you know, like like your timeline or past lives and things like that. Your Mercury, is it retrograde? It looks like it is. So your ability to think differently about healing. Also to your Neptune, which is like spiritual as well. So that's just huge. There's so many different aspects that your Chiron and Saturn are connecting to. So yeah, I can absolutely see that you're on a really similar path there. Is there anything else you want me to observe as well? What else do you notice? You've both got Pluto in your 11th.
Yeah.
Which I think significant. I've also got Pluto in my 11th as well. And my experience of that is like the 11th house is about the sort of collective values, and also about, I would say, trusting in the collective memory or the collective space. With Pluto there, it creates a bit of a distrust for narratives, and it really shows this kind of energy of needing to find out for yourself. We've got fighter jets going over at the moment. I don't know if you can hear those. So I don't know if it's almost like being an outsider. I don't know if that resonates with you guys, like the feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I was always told, I'm not an astrologer, so tell me if I'm wrong, Louisa, but that my Chiron was about people, me working with people that don't belong. Because myself, when I was younger, I was fostered when I was a baby. And so I always had that sort of feeling of not necessarily belonging, even though I had a great family. And I think that Chiron, a lot of my clients seem to have that sort of, what can I say, that sort of characteristic of not feeling like they belong in the world, or, you know, in whatever way they don't belong, you know.
Yeah, I think that's really profound. And yeah, one of the things that I like about what you're saying here, your Pluto is in opposition to Chiron, and so is your Uranus. It's because of the year that you're born. Everyone born in your year has this particular pattern of like Saturn and Chiron and Pluto and Uranus. And there is definitely this feeling of, like uncertainty, the uncertainty that you were talking about, the sort of feeling like an orphan to the world. So Pluto here is very much about being an outsider, and then Chiron here is like you don't necessarily feel like you fit into the normal day-to-day story, so I can see how that would absolutely bring up what you're saying there, for sure. Also, the ruler of your home, excuse me, the ruler of your home, like this part here, the fourth house, it's Saturn. And so your Saturn's in a conjunction with Chiron, which would also say, there is hurt associated with where you belong. I would say it's a really good interpretation.
I think it's interesting that neither of us have much placements in third, fourth and fifth house. Like it's always empty.
It is, yeah.
And that everything's bunched up in the other houses.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know, actually.
I don't know either.
I mean, it's funny. A lot of people, when they start learning astrology, say, "Oh, I've got an empty house. Therefore, I must not have anything to do with the home, or I must have nothing to do with the community." And my early years, which is very much the third house, and the fifth is like creativity and children. Now, I know that we're all mums. I know that we all have homes, and I know that we all can show up in our communities and stuff. So it doesn't follow that if you have nothing in it, that you don't do very well. But what with empty houses, it's important to see what the ruler is. What's the planet that rules this house, and where is that planet? So in yours, Bo, your Jupiter rules your third house. And your Jupiter's in the 10th. He's also in the sign of Leo, and he's almost on a real sort of like wide conjunction with Juno. But your Jupiter is making this lovely connection to your Sun and Venus, and so your third house has the pattern of Jupiter and Venus and the Sun. So if we think like Jupiter and Venus are the benefics, they're the beneficial planets, they're the ones of hope and optimism and connection and togetherness. And the Sun is about self-expression. So the third house, which is about how you are in your local environment, about learning things and the sort of usual interactions that people go through on a day-to-day basis. Yours is about peace and optimism and friendliness and getting on. There's no malice there, is what I would say. The way you function in the world is to be peaceful and to be proactive and to be helpful. And Jupiter's also making a lovely trine with Saturn as well. So it's also practical. You don't want to kind of blow up your local community with like loads of ideas but no action. You have a certain amount of measure and discernment, in your community. And so I would look at the rulers of each of your third, fourth and fifth, and that gives you more of a description. So for instance, your third, Jenny, is ruled by Saturn and Uranus, because your Aquarius has two rulers. Now your Aquarius, Uranus is in the 12th house. So there's something of the psychic detective in you within your communities. And so you might find, Jenny, that you, without meaning to, stir up a little bit of psychic energy when you are out and about in the local environment, So you're picking up on all these signals all the time. And some people might be aware of that, and that might sort of wrong foot them a little bit.
I do find sometimes when I'm out and about, we're doing nothing like purposefully. I seem to trigger people just by not. I did it the other day in the hospital, and the secretary started to have an anxiety attack, but I wasn't doing anything. I don't know what she was picking up on me, but she started to do vagal exercises and deep breathing and all sorts of stuff. But sometimes I find I receive aggressiveness when I'm just like walking down the street. I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't know whether that's because subconsciously I might trigger something in somebody. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is something of that going on. I've got my Uranus in the 12th, and I think people with the Uranus in the 12th can sometimes bring up a lot of unconscious stirrings in people,
I do find I also people cry a lot with me. Like one time I was flying back on holiday from Mexico, and I was sat next to this guy who I'd never seen before in my life, and he was watching the film about Freddie Mercury, and I was watching the film at the same time, but I was about 10 minutes behind him, and I could see that he was crying through the film. And I was thinking as I was watching the film, am I being a really cold, kind of heartless thing? Because I'm not feeling this emotion like he is. But anyway, when the film finished, I turned around and I said to him, "Are you okay?" And for the rest of the journey, he told me his whole life story. He cried a lot. And then at the end, he gave me a hug and he walked away, and I never saw him again. But that's just like an example of how I don't know what it is. I can meet people for a very short space of time, and they'll start to open up about things that they've probably never talked about before, or they've never probably even thought about before. You know, most of my clients end up crying when I do my first appointment with them.
You should use that as a strapline.
yeah. Because I don't know. It's like managing to put the finger on where the bruise is.
Yes. Yes. The word that comes to mind, I think, is cathartic. You know, and you've got your Uranus in the 12th as well, Bo. I think we're all able to kind of locate that source of hidden psychic pain, and it's cathartic, and it's very difficult for people. They can't. I guess they can't ignore themselves in your company. They can't not notice who they are. You help people see themselves a bit better.
It's a bit of a mirror energy, is it?
Yeah. It's difficult. I've got your chart here, Whitney, because I always like to have a look at my guest chart, because I always think that, you know, what they do for a living really shows up in their chart. I know we've had a look at it before. Are you okay? I'm guessing you're okay with me doing this, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating. I'm excited.
There's a few things, you know, like I was chatting to some shamanistic friends yesterday, and I was noticing some patterns between all of our charts. And one of the things was the Earth. And of course, you're born with your ascendant and your sun in the sign of Virgo. And in particular, your sun is right on your ascendant, which is really, really strong. Because obviously you're coming from a branding perspective, aren't you? And almost creating a healing for people in how they are able to fully express themselves in their career. Is that a good description?
Yes, that's really good. Love it. Very good. Yes.
It's about bringing the innate personality forwards. And that's what I see with your sun right on your ascendant. You know, the sun is about what we're radiating out, you know, the light that we are, the magnetism that we are. And it's right on your ascendant, which is, it's like you were born to be here at this time, if you know what I mean. And the Virgo sign is all... Well, it's all earthy, it's all grounded, it's very natural, and very fit for purpose. You know, there's a practicality to what you do as well. You're not doing it for the sake of doing it. I'm guessing, you know, there's a sort of very sort of purposeful feel to it. Now, something else that my two guests yesterday, and also me, and also you, that we share is that Chiron, which is the wounded healer, which is very prominent in the charts of people who work in healing, work in coaching, and mentoring and things like that. Your Chiron is in a trine to your sun and to your ascendant, really showing that you're in the right place at the right time when you find yourself able to work with people. And your Chiron is also in the 8th house, which is a place of mystery. And I think of it as very much a psychic house, you know, a place where what's hidden in our karma, what's hidden in our family patterns is able to be seen and released. And also something that comes up. So that's also in an earth sign. And then you've also got Ceres down here, which is the earth mother, or Demeter. You know, she's Mother Earth. She's about healing and nurturing, very much about supporting women. And Ceres is also about the different stages in life of women, you know, like the idea of maiden, mother, crone. You've got this lovely grand trine between your sun, to do with your personality, healing with Chiron, and then nurturing the divine feminine, all in earth signs, which I think is really wonderful. Is there anything that catches your eye about your chart, intuitively, that you think, oh, what's that about?
Oh, I think I'm not very well versed into it. I always just love listening to information about it. But I guess the only thing that jumps out, it's all the planets. It's all squished.
What, down here?
Yeah, like in like this side of the chart, the first, second, third, and fourth, and also the 12th. I guess that's where all those are those the planets?
Yeah, I've got a couple of asteroids in there as well that I've put in for sort of divine measure, I guess. So all the planets, and that's the North Node. These are all sort of important points. And then we've got Pallas Athena, which is a goddess of feminine strategy and recognizing patterns. We've got this one here is Vesta. She's the goddess of, I would say, integrity and the fire that is in your womb, like that sacral energy that gets you going. Ceres being the goddess of like mothering and nourishing. And then Juno, which is about commitment. So, like when you look at all the planets of the solar system, there are only two energies that are considered female. So one of them is Venus, and the other one is the moon. All the other planets relate to Greek or Roman gods who are masculine. They're all masculine characters. So I purposefully put in these feminine, strong goddess archetypes to sort of even out the balance. So you've got all of these feminines in quite a tight space, but you've got a lot of it all just down here. And then interestingly, this is kind of like a bucket formation where you've got everything in one half. In fact, this is a bucket formation. You've got everything in one side, and then you've got a handle to your bucket, and your handle is actually Chiron, which is about healing of the wounds. Isn't it interesting that you picked out on the fact that everything was squashed into one half? Because it highlights the fact that Chiron is there. It's the handle, it's the thing that helps you express all the bucket side of you, all of the energies in this very concentrated part of your chart.
Like, wow.
Right at the bottom here, this is quite magical, I think. See, these things are known as the points. I think of them as the north, south, east, and west. Like this is about everything that's you, and everything that's not you. So all your projections and people in your life. And then this is everything that's kind of safe and home and grounded and hidden away. And this is where you're out in the public eye. So this is seen as the hallmark of like a career. This is really important. And this point here called the vertex, which I always think the vertex represents what the universe wants you to do as a job. Like we grow up and people say, oh, why is it you want to do? And people say, oh, I want to be a nurse or a teacher. This is like the chart is not asking you what you want to do. It's saying this is what you're doing. It's like your calling. Your vertex right at the top of the chart. To me, it's saying you're there to be in a career. You're there to show people about careers. You're there to help stay at the top. You're there to help people be visible, if that makes sense. So I think that's kind of fantastic. There's a really strong side of you that actually just wants to be at home as well, with all these down here, in sort of like private space. So you've got Neptune, which is all about creativity. I realise I've lowered my voice as if I'm conspiring with you. But you've got like Neptune here, which is all about the sort of magical, mystical, spiritual connection. And then Vesta, which is about your integrity. So, if something's right. like spiritually, because you feel it in your bones. It's like you feel it in your waters, and you're more likely to be able to tune into it all when you're at home, when you're grounded, when you're feeling in that sort of calm, safe space. And it's interesting that your beautiful drawings that you do and the shamanic journeys that you take people on involve patterns and colours and shapes and ideas, because Pallas Athena is about defining patterns and noticing patterns and creating strategy from patterns. So I think that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Right?
Oh my God, that is so like, because and I think it's so funny because that's how I see it. It's connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So like in a way, it's like connecting the patterns. And I think it applies to all of my clients when I work with them, and to really draw out, okay, well, what is your brand strategy? That's kind of how I word it.
Yeah.
Is to seek, or another way to word it, it's to find a golden thread. I've heard, it being talked about too. Just a different way of speaking to it, but just you exploring that part and the patterns, like that's how I would relate to that. It's to, everyone has it, so it's just about bring a light to it, and then, all the time, it just so works, because at the root or the core of everybody in the essence of who they are can be found in those patterns.
I love that. I've just noticed some other things that I just want to share. Sorry.
Yes.
I said, it's only going to be 10 minutes. So something else I noticed, because you're talking about working with your clients to help them sort of like find their golden thread. There are two planets that are known as being beneficial in astrology, and one of them's Jupiter and the other is Venus. Now, they're both at 0 degrees in their own signs. Now, 0 degree energy is about new starts, fresh new starts. So there is this sort of sense of fresh, new, beneficial starts. And Jupiter is in the 11th house, which is about networking, creating powerful friendships, creating powerful networks, a supportive system. So you've got a real ability to not only tune in to people who you're working with and help them make a connective and supportive new network of help, but you're doing it for yourself. But then with Venus at 0 degrees, it's in the second house. The second house is about our money. And so it's absolutely connected to money as well. So I just see this as like you're helping people to develop their brand and to broaden their reach. And at the same time, it's bringing you a sort of benefit, and it's bringing them a benefit. It's really, really quite magical. And when I notice that Jupiter's at 0 degrees and Venus is at 0 degrees, I know that on the 25th of May this year, Jupiter is going to be at 0 degrees here in Gemini, starting the run up of a time of really intense career focus for you. It's creating a lovely sort of launch pad, as if you're going down the runway, and your plane's going to rise up, because when Jupiter goes to 0 degrees here, he's going to be in a lovely sextile here. He's going to be connected in a quincunx to Venus. So both of your benefic planets, your lucky planets, are going to be highlighted and emphasized. And then during this summer, Jupiter's going to come right over your midheaven, the highest point in your chart, and really, whip up all the energy that you might need to help the women that you work with, and maybe also bring up a lot more business for you. So I see that you're going to be riding high. I love it. Have you got any other thoughts that you might, or anything else that you notice about your chart? If you can bear to be scrutinized for a bit longer.
This is so much fun. Yes, please. Yeah.
Well, there's one last thing that I think is quite eclectic and quite special, and that is your Moon and Uranus conjunction. So you've got your Uranus in the sign of Scorpio, 13 degrees in the third house. The third house is all about marketing and communications and your communities. So this is kind of communities. This is like local communities where people are in contact. And this is kind of like networks, where people are within a community, but at a much grander scale, like where you're sort of planning things together. So having your moon here shows that you're able to pull together people, pull together the sort of building blocks of a community, and really speak to the heart of that community in a really open and transparent, and sometimes a bit rebellious way. You're challenging people's thoughts, especially in the sign of Scorpio as well. But the conjunction with Uranus is a natural planet. I mean, if you look at him, he looks like a space invader. He is literally a big aerial. It's like you're channeling information to your groups. You're channeling information to your communities and able to put a voice to it and speak to the heart of your community. So I think that's also very special. And it's almost like you've got I always think Uranus is a bit like those heart paddles that people use to like resuscitate people, kind of like shock them back into their heart space. So I really, that's how I think your birth chart really relates to your work.
Wow, that is so cool. I love it.
It's a really, really cool chart. So thanks for letting me have a look at that. I really, really appreciate that.
Oh no, same. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
You have to let me know what happens, at the end of May, and how that Jupiter energy right over the top of your chart. You have to let me know how that goes this summer.
Oh yeah. I am so see, these are the moments where I let my intuition guide me. Mm-hmm. And that's how you and I connected. I'm like, I gotta seek her out. And I'm so just happy that you told me the May time frame. And so I am so excited. I don't think I've ever been this excited about launching.
You got it covered. You're going to be fine. You're going to do it.
I feel like I have all the energy backing me up, Yeah. So that's going to be exciting. I cannot wait to see how it unfolds. And definitely I'm going to update you. Oh, Louisa, you said.
Excellent. I'll watch your space. We'll finish this conversation later on this year.
Yeah.